And some people actually in Westminster are unhappy about one thing, which is some people in the government, and I can understand why they might think this, are increasingly thinking this is an inquiry which is focusing too much on the personalities, focusing too much on the individuals, rather than what they think it should be about, which is about the systemic lessons for a potential another inquiry, rather than individual culpability. I mean, in a sense, maybe it's a bit like the comparison to be drawn here is almost, it's kind of becoming like you could argue, like a medical scientific Leveson inquiry, which is obviously about media and about politics. And it becomes sort of, it's almost impossible to resist the allure of investigating those individual relationships and individual sets of responsibilities.
I do think that critique or criticism would have more weight if you didn't have such big personalities at the heart of government during that time. And I think it is almost impossible, to take Boris Johnson's personality out of how the COVID process was handled. We know that he offered to shake hands with people to show that COVID was fine, in their hospital beds going round. We know, we've had revealed that he thought it would be a good idea to get given the virus, have himself injected with the virus to prove that it was all smoke and mirrors.
I still can't believe that.
I mean, just to repeat those things out loud, you are not dealing with a system. You're dealing with a man who was actually playing at being an emperor during that time of COVID, who thought somehow he could magically wash away the virus because he knew how to deal with it, whereas the scientists all got their knickers in a twist over something that they didn't really understand.
I mean, all the time this was going on, I was on the other side of the Atlantic and reporting from Washington.
You had a real emperor.
Where there was another emperor who was equally as capricious and irascible and determined to go his own way and not follow advice. And yet, America locked down over a week before the UK. Even Donald Trump was persuaded of the need by the Centers for Disease Control and, Fauci and all the rest of them, that this had to happen. And so it was on the 15th of March that he kind of stood up and said, we've got 15 days to slow the spread of the virus. And he was only going to close down the US for 15 days, but actually it stayed on for an extra month until the end of April, because they kind of realised that if they wanted to slow the transmission rate of the disease, you had to act more quickly. And it seemed incredible to me in Washington that this was not happening in Britain, and that Britain was still open for business and still going on. And it was as if it was kind of wishful thinking that it wouldn't need to come to this, and that was down to Boris as well.
And this was basically the admission we got from Chris Whitty today, that they should have, on balance, locked down earlier.
The Newsagents. This is a Global Player original podcast.